Welcome back to Rushfield to the Rushfield Jamboree, to my daily chat. Formerly, I was calling it "What's Wrong with Richard Rushfield," and had the inspiration while I was away that trying to brand two new confusing titles at once for different purposes might be more than that might not be how a branding specialist would recommend that I go at it. So I'm just calling. So now that we're back from vacation, we are back. I'm just calling it the daily chat, the daily check-in. If anyone has any strong feelings about what this should be called, send me an email and let me know. Um, but we have a great guest for our return chat or jamboree or get together. Um, so I One of my very very biggest issues is independent film and the independent and the creators community and create and enabling them to create things outside of the system. And it seems to me that there's basically three components to that, and all of them open up, and all of them sort of digital and new media give solutions that we no longer need that to create new things outside of the studio system that we need basically on production, on marketing, and on distribution. All of them, it just there's new channels open, and on the latter of those, I have with me a gentleman who is providing one of these great pathways to enable people to distribute um, and get their films out to the world and get their great creations of all kinds out to the world without having to have a 25,000 person distribution department with offices in every city and everything. So without further ado, the CEO and founder of Filmhub, Alan Descragnole. Did I say that right?
Very well. Thank you, Rich.
Very good. I'm sorry. And Film Hub, if you do not know it, I'm going to read from the website here because it's a Film Hub is a global sales and distribution company modernizing how entertainment reaches audiences, and backed by world class creatives, industry innovators, and a powerful network of trusted relationships. We take every story further is how its own website describes it. I'm going to ask him to describe it better, and why it offers real opportunities to people who, beyond just showing up at a festival and hoping that uh, Amazon drops a ton of money on your head or something. Welcome, Alan. So tell me, you don't come from the film world initially. You come out of the tech world. So how did you get into all this crazy stuff?
Yeah. Well, first off, Rich, thanks for having me here. And thanks
Um,
to everyone here that's joining live and everyone's listening to this later time. It's great to be here and share a bit of the Film Hub story. I have a background in building technology companies, everything from Square and the Cash App, Intuit and Mint.com. Worked in the gaming sector and really just like love to build, but actually had a background in creative background from building theater production back in university. And so really wanted to figure out how to marry those love and the interests of arts and technology. And got introduced to my co-founder, who is Klaus Videlt, world-renowned composer playing Pirates of the Caribbean, Gladiator, Thin Red Line, and paired up to start Film Up. And the impetus was, how do we take the aspects of sales and distribution that is kind of traditional relationship-based industry and turbocharge that with technology? And when you put those two things together, you have what is necessary to scale distribution in the modern world. You know, the aspect of flying on a plane and getting to MIPCOM and Cannes and, hoping that's where things are going to get done, yes, those are great places to build some of those relationships. But at the same time, we live in a world that is modernized, and we need to have technology that helps make that possible. And a distribution relationship should be accessible to anyone that can make a film. And we've brought the bar down to reaching distribution significantly. And most people believe, oh, I've got to move to LA to go make a film and get that done. Well, we've proven actually no, you could be based anywhere in the world. We distribute films for filmmakers in 100 plus countries. and distribute our films into 200 plus territories throughout the world now, all directly online, and make it super simple for everyone to get distribution.
That's what so how did you get interested in all this from I mean, I would imagine that in the tech world, like, where everything is about scale and going, how do we become the one company that everyone in the world uses for every single one of their needs? Independent film isn't, necessarily top of mind for everybody, and the great how did this, how'd you get go down this rabbit hole?
Well, so I think here's the thing, right? Define what is independent film, right? Independent film is actually 98, 99% of the film market, right? And when you think about it in that way, in that light, you realize that actually what the world needs is just true access to distribution, whether you are a filmmaker making your first film for $30,000 or a filmmaker making something for 10 to $20 million, right? Up through, kind of, I'm calling the top 1% is the true studio productions, $50 million plus in budget, things like that. And so when you look at that, you realize that actually, 90 plus percent of the market is independent film. It's actually a massive market that needs technology in order to scale. And what's happened though is the industry has just relied on relationships, who it knows in order to scale. And we wanted to bring that, bar down significantly so that distribution was actually accessible for anyone everywhere in the world.
So when you started tackling this, what were the first hurdles you found? What were the first things that you said that
Yeah.
the
Well, I think
walls you bumped into?
the biggest part that's been, kind of that our industry has gone from, right, is, we really, started pushing the business kind of in, I would say, January of 2020 when we really went full time on this effort. And at the beginning of that, we were just kind of ending this major and in the midst of this SVOD fixed fee licensing game that was, driven by the, streaming wars between Netflix, Paramount, et cetera, all those platforms. And what was happening at that time was kind of this slow shift from fixed fee licensing into a more revenue share based world across the advertising based services, the transactional based services. And we were facing this hard point where people were used to, oh, we can only license, you know, 10, 20 films because we're paying large fixed fees. Well, in the revenue share based world, all of a sudden licensing becomes unbottlenecked because what you're actually trying to do is you're licensing large volumes of content and letting the audience pick and decide what wins because the way that filmmakers are incentivized becomes based on a revenue share. And so the main kind of hurdle was beginning to push services towards more volume licensing rather than trying to pick and choose exactly what they believe the winners are going to be. And we're still in that battle today. It is definitely getting, better where a lot of services are realizing the importance of depth of volume of their catalog and using more algorithmic based approaches for search and discovery. What Rich wants to watch is completely different than what I want to watch. And,
I hope so. Yeah.
and we can't solely rely on one acquisitions person making that decision at scale in our world. We're a world of 6
Y
billion people. If
yeah.
one acquisitions person picks what 6 billion people want to watch, we're going to end up with a very limited monoculture society. And that's not how our society operates.
No, and there's no question that this giant Goliath model of studio distribution, which paradoxically in the digital age has become even more monolithic as in acquisitions, it's really just 3 or 4 companies now that dominate it. Um, it but that is so out of keeping with just the way people watch things and the way people think of things and all the things that are available to people right now. So take me through. So I'm a filmmaker. I made a movie, and I look to Filmhub as a way to get it out there. Take me through the journey of what I would
Yeah.
go through there.
So I'll use a prime example of a film, actually a film I was just at a screening for last night called The Fisherman. Amazing film by a filmmaker, director, writer by her name's Zoe Martinson. She had an amazing story where she was half Ghanaian, made this film in Ghana called The Fisherman, made it on a, shoestring budget of $200,000 in Ghana, was ended up being a selection to the Venice Film Festival, right? Had international accolades throughout the world. And, she wrote this actually while she was during the writer's strike. And this is a film that is highly accoladed worldwide, doesn't necessarily fit the bill of what a major streamer may have in their acquisitions needs because, a film in from there may not have the most wide audience, but there's a group of people that really would love this film and do love this film. And, we acquired rights into the US and a few other territories. And, that ultimately has led to, and the filmmaker at the same time has also been doing their own kind of like mini theatrical run with the film in different areas and locations. And, we're now pushing towards a transactional release across, major transactional platforms like Amazon, Apple TV, and then also our own owned and operated service called Relay. And
So so
really trying.
people so just to pause this, so she will upload the film to Filmhub,
Yep.
and what does that entail? What
Yeah.
just tell me how that goes there.
Yeah. So, our contract signing process is all online. It's very simple and easy, click to accept terms of service. We have different models. Like sometimes when we get more involved, we are putting up minimum guarantees and advances and P&A funds. That's an example where we are more involved in this film. We also have a standard kind of like non-exclusive distribution. That's an easy, push it everywhere, get it available model. She uploads all the assets, goes through, submits all the artwork. We provide guides and tools and services to help make that simpler and easier. You can even buy your captions online, subtitles, translations everywhere, all those. And we then go through a quality control process to make sure the assets are all correct, similar to what your post house would do, or maybe an encoding house like
Right.
previously a Deluxe or Premiere Digital or some of those folks. We do all of that in house to make sure we keep the costs down for the filmmakers. And then we have relationships in place with over 150 different streaming platforms, theatrical distribution companies, uh, educational distributors, all of those, kind of major partners now throughout the world. And we are now on the process of pitching that film to every single service where it makes sense that that film needs to be available to its audiences. And that's the process we're in right now. As I mentioned, that film in particular is launching first on two platforms because we think it's, needs kind of this like more transactional push at the beginning to really find the people that are, this is not a film that's going to be watched by 80, 100 million people worldwide, right? That is not what this film is.
Right.
But there are probably a million folks that would like to watch this film, at least, and that would be willing to pay to watch that film. And so we're, pushing for that with this audience, and then we'll kind of make it more widely available once we've, found and try to convert as much of that audience as we can find in the early groups, and then
So
expand.
what does that entail, like finding the audience and converting
Yeah.
it?
So it depends on the film and how, where their audience lives. So in this instance, right, we've partnered with a PR firm that is going to be helping, drive the release PR, announcing in the trades, different relevant consumer publications of groups that are interested in it. Sometimes it involves us reaching out to different services and maybe organizations that have relevant details that it fits with them and their structure. And that might, it depends on the film and where it is. Sometimes a lot of these filmmakers also have built up big distribution lists where they have email lists that they're utilizing and driving. And those are all things that we look for as we are preparing kind of a marketing strategy with the filmmakers.
So, we have a question from the audience. Cramerica asks, what rights and profits does she sign away to
Um,
join your service and model?
So it depends on the film, right? It totally depends on the film. The main types of rights we take obviously are kind of like standard, transactional subscription rights, advertising based rights. Sometimes we're taking education rights. Sometimes we are taking theatrical rights. Totally depends on the film and where it's at in its distribution cycle, right? In this film, filmmaker had actually already managed most of the theatrical, so we carved out theatrical rights for them, because they could keep going on that effort. And we really want to be the most filmmaker friendly possible for us. And the key is, right, carving out a right. The way that I look at a right is just the more marketing that is done in other areas and builds up an audience there, the more opportunity we have to drive revenue in other methods. So the fact that the filmmaker in this instance is doing a mini theatrical tour, is doing Q&As with folks, that's just building an audience. It's going to make it easier for a release on streaming later. That's free marketing
Hmm,
and driving for us. So we want to work with filmmakers and give those availability.
interesting. Now, what what you we talk a lot about independent film because that's kind of my obsession, and you do a lot, but you work, but it's sort of the creator space is also relevant to you. I know. So I was very interested in your press release here. You talked about you have one of the leading creators in the paranormal space on the platform. Tell me about that. Tell me about the as a as a use case here, the paranormal space and what that consists of and how you help reach that.
Totally. So you know, the entirety of the film and TV industry has kind of been this walled garden that has been unavailable to, what has been branded as digital first creators.
Yeah,
People making content on YouTube, right? That we'll start with that as kind of their first initial platforms. Well, all of these folks that have been making videos and content on YouTube are professional filmmakers. We just haven't called them that actually because of the way that their platforms and the methods that they've used have been different than somebody who is, creating their first short film and submitting it to Cannes Film Festival, right?
yeah.
A very different, kind of methodology of learning and kind of school, which you're brought up in. But at the same time, you're learning the same skill sets actually when it boils down to. And so we've long seen that the digital creator world that's been developing and is actually nearly as big, if not bigger, almost than the film world at this point, that we've seen that as a huge opportunity to kind of marry those creators with traditional film and TV distribution. What's happened is the streaming platforms, the Amazons, the Rokus, the Tubies, et cetera, of the world are now very much realizing that, hey, this is amazing content that is getting tons and millions of hours of streams and is solely available on certain platforms. Well, we want to bring some of those folks over to us so that we can bring audiences into our platforms. And so we're partnering with a number of digital creators that are, excellent in their space and helping bring them into the film and TV distribution world. One of those of which is Kelsey Davies. She has over 3 million subscribers on her YouTube channel. She is self-described as kind of Gen Z unsolved mysteries, horror, paranormal. She deals with voodoo dolls and witchcraft and, all sorts of different things in the paranormal space. And guess what? She runs her own production company,
Hmm.
and we are helping her take her YouTube content, syndicate it across different services. She has an original launching on Tubi soon that was just recently announced. And, we're building a fast channel for her as well. That's going to be available on a number of different platforms. And we're trying to help get her the widest distribution possible so that she can find new audiences that are beyond YouTube and bring her audiences to those platforms and then bring the people that find and discover her on other platforms back to her YouTube. And so
Do
really
that?
building a full virtuous circle for her.
Do those folks have concerns at first that working outside of YouTube will cannibalize their YouTube audience or hurt it? How do you look at that?
Some people have a concern about that, right? Not going to lie, but the way that the world is happening, right, is audience attention is across so many services now that if you're on one service but not on another, you have no chance of collecting that person, right?
No.
And so, for instance, like with Kelsey, right, we're launching a podcast channel for her on Spotify right now. And because guess what? Like if her content's not available on Spotify and someone is like listening to other unsolved mysteries podcast type content, let's find that audience that exists on Spotify and help cross pollinate with YouTube. And the people that are smart about this are realizing that their content needs to be everywhere. And the traditional media industry sees that as well, right? Look at even a Netflix, right? They release Stranger Things on their platform, but they also release tons of clips on YouTube to help drive and cross pollinate the audiences, right? many, Paramount is releasing certain single episodes of series to help get people interested on YouTube, so it drives back to subscribers on Paramount Plus. It's the way the world is working, right? These are marketing opportunities, and the more marketing opportunities you create for yourself, the more awareness you're going to build. And the key
So
is, on these platforms, they're all algorithmically driven, and so they're free marketing opportunities for you.
so how many different platforms are do you have arrangements with, or do you have to
Over
distribute to?
150.
So the 150. So we all here in Hollywood, we're so used to thinking of like, well, there's Netflix, there's Amazon, there's HBO, there's Disney, and there's I guess there's YouTube too.
Yep.
So maybe five there. So there's 100 and so that's 150 different platforms that I presume they all have their own audiences and things going on there, or they wouldn't be existing. But thinking of distribution in that way, that it's not just getting to one of these few places, but a lot is such a revolution in how we've been talking about it.
100%, right? We live in a world where we were taught to think that exclusivity is the sole and only way of distribution,
Mhm.
right? And for the modern filmmaker, right? Yes, don't get me wrong. If you get a nice exclusive upfront deal, that's a great thing to have. But at the same time, you also want just distribution. And so that's another area that where you have to think about it is like it is sometimes more valuable to be wider than it is to have one single sole service that's distributing your content.
Um, that so can you give me an example of a success story on the site and how that when that has come on there and how what that looked like across their lifespan there.
Totally. So one of my favorite stories of this past year is Balance. It's a docu series on perimenopause. It is by two amazing filmmakers who are the U.S.'s first female Jane monks. Um, uh, Sadali and Anabuti are their names, and they produced an amazing docu series, EP'd by Alyssa Milano, Jeannie Mai, on perimenopause, which is a topic that most streaming platforms don't want to touch. Right, this is a topic that is very much in the zeitgeist. If you search on TikTok, Instagram, search perimenopause, you will have hundreds of
Mhm.
influencers, doctors talking about this, and it
But it's
is
but it's not something that Disney Plus or, Netflix are looking to get some content, on.
100%, right? But this is a topic that affects 100% of the world, whether you are a man or a woman. And it is a very important topic that needs to be discussed and understood. But major brands don't want to touch it because it's seen as something, no matter what, one part of the aisle is going to be upset about some coverage in this, and it could reflect badly on their brand because it ties to medicine, could be seen as political, like so many different aspects. But guess what? This is a story that needs to be told, and we need to, allow that story to be heard and understood in the world. And like, yes, you don't have to believe everything in the doc. You don't have to necessarily fully subscribe to everything, but it's a good data point that should help educate people in the world. And, we brought it out to the world. We, hired an excellent press firm that we worked with. We had the filmmakers on the Today Show, Extra, they were in People Magazine, all over. And we had an amazing transactional release to start the film's release. Hit number 3, I believe, on Apple, number 5 on Amazon, or maybe it was vice versa. Beating out major productions such as Yellowstone, White Lotus available for, buy and purchase on there. And guess what? That's a great success, right? And this is, made a strong return for the filmmakers, and utilized kind of the power of viral marketing. They also had a lot of doctors that were kind of some of these influencers on Instagram in the series, and utilized those to build the audience to help watch this. And it wasn't just a film just for women. It also, there's a full episode just explaining the effects that it has on a man. And that was a story that needed to be told, and major platforms didn't want to touch it at first. And, we got involved to help get that story told.
So where was it finding its audience, ultimately? How did that come in?
So,
Was it
yeah, so we started first on Amazon and Apple, as our first transactional platforms, and then have
and
expanded.
those are both on rev share, so you
Yes.
for every so many you get a check for every so many views or minutes or however many times.
Exactly. So we launched first on RevShare, because we knew that this was in such high demand that we wanted to bring it to an audience that has a higher dollar sign and willingness to purchase it. And that was important for the first launch of it, was finding, kind of high willingness to pay audience, right? Now we've expanded it and made it available on some advertising based services, some, lower cost services as a way to make it more widely available and at a lower cost now that we've kind of like found the initial marketing audience within it. Um, and we're bringing it into library services such as Canopy and Hoopla, and even some smaller broadcasters throughout Europe as well. And bringing it out to wider audiences everywhere. So
Um,
yeah, it is available worldwide. Actually, if you're anywhere in the world and wanted to watch that, you can actually even watch it on we have our own consumer streaming app called Relay, which is pickrelay.com. And you can watch that film anywhere in the world today.
so as we go, so final question here. We're running out of time. Substack needs the room back, so we'll give them. But we're going into festival season here, and um, the festivals. It's this great lottery game, and every year I see so many great films at Toronto and Sundance are the two I typically go to
Yep.
that just won't never get an audience beyond those. And it's you look at Sundance, it's like 6,000 films are submitted, 100 are accepted. Of those, a dozen will get major releases. So that comes down to 12 films out of 6 to 8,000 submitted. Um, so but everyone seems to be directed towards like trying to get that big that big prize, and if they and with no plan B if they don't. So how would you tell filmmakers, those 6,000 filmmakers out there, and Toronto will see all sorts of foreign films and all sorts of uh, smaller films that are never going to get any kind of release in the U.S. How would you tell them to think about this as they begin their journey?
Well, the funny thing, right, that people don't realize about the film festival is guess what? Just getting into the film festival is seen as a huge accolade, right?
Yeah,
But getting into the film festival really gets you almost nothing because the deal at the film festival is no longer happening, right?
yeah,
You look at Sundance, like last year, probably 10, 20 films got distribution deals out
yeah.
of it. So it's like, you mean, so after my
And and a
1,000,
lot of a lot of those are a nominal fee, giving up all your rights to be buried in a dark corner of a giant
exactly.
surface.
Exactly. And that is so people don't tell you that like, just getting into a film festival, people see it as like, "Oh my god, I made it. This is great." The film festival doesn't get you much. And yes, it gets you like a feeling as an artist of like I was accepted by this, group that reviewed my film and thought that I deserved to be here. Great. That's awesome. That's an amazing feeling to feel as a filmmaker, right? That your work was recognized that way. But you're recognized by a small group of people that does screenings, right? And who at that point then, okay, you've made the festival, you're in there. What does that mean? What's the next step? You actually still have to go fully out and still find your audience, still find how to get it out in the world distributed. And you still have that's only like inning one of the battle. And, the biggest thing is a lot of times once they've made it to there, the filmmaker's like, well, I don't even know exactly who the audience is for this film. And I'm like, well, if you're finding that out when you're at the festival, trying to figure out who your audience is, you're a little too late kind of in the distribution journey of figuring out who the target group is. And this is, one of the problems that films face is they haven't figured out who their audience is, where they want it to go. And they've just made a piece of art that is amazing, but doesn't have a real thought of how is that actually going to get now into the viewer's home and what platforms is it going to be on? Where is it a good fit? How am I going to market this to people? That's really the next step, but needs to be thought about even before applying to festivals. And so festivals are great from a marketing recognition perspective, but they are not great, and they can be used as part of an audience building strategy, but they need to be thought as one little pillar of building your film's audience and kind of driving it. That's
Yeah.
only one area that you can think about it.
It feels so often like their plan is, "I'm gonna go to Las Vegas and put all my money on 26
Yeah,
and win."
yeah.
Uh, and that's about what and, you know, if 26 comes up, then terrific. That plan.
It works for point X percent of films, and that's, that if people wanna play that game, that's okay. I'm not that type of person. I do like to make bets, but at the same time, I want to take a bet and figure out, okay, if that happens, great, but I need a plan B and
Yeah,
plan C of how I'm actually going to do this. Right. And that's how the filmmakers that are smart are realizing and thinking in that way. And the key that actually I think I see that many filmmakers need to learn right now from both musicians as well as digital creators is musicians and digital creators know that they are business people and creatives. The filmmaker still thinks that they are solely a creative.
yeah.
And if they don't realize that they have to be also a business person, it's very hard to make it solely as a creative.
Well, if you don't wanna be that, then you won't be that, so you can have a nice hobby
Yeah. In your hobby
of
project,
filmmaking.
which is okay. Which is okay. If you want to be a hobbyist filmmaker, that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is to really make money and make a career of it, solely being a creative is very hard. You need the best creatives are also business people, and
Or have a partner,
or have a partner that can act as that for them. 100%
yeah,
agree. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Alan, thank you so much. Filmhub is a site. Alan Descragnole, was that close?
Correct. Yes.
Very good. Is our site, we saving building a new paths for independent film is the passion of this site. Um, and we're doing places like Filmhub and what you're doing are going to be the future. Are going to be how we dig our way out of this dependence on a increasingly calcified studio system. And it's the audience we see time and again. The audiences are there, and finding ways to get different ways to get to them is the whole battle. You noted in the ballot in the comments, pickrelay.com is the site to watch the film. So everybody go there, check out all they're doing. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's talk again soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Rich. Absolute
Take care.
pleasure.
My pleasure is mine. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.